Paul Daley, a legend of British MMA, who very sadly is making his retirement Friday night at Bellator 281. Paul, great to sit down and chat. How are things with you today?
Yeah, good, mate. Not too bad. Yeah, next week, just getting ready, getting the last little bit of weight off. So, bit tired, but it's all good. Heading into fight week on weight, so no problems.
Of course, that sounds good to hear. Obviously, a fighter never really truly knows what retirement is going to feel like. But what has this last camp been like, and these remaining days up until the final rodeo?
It's been a combination of emotions, to be fair. It's still tiring. I still feel like I want to retire. I almost forgot how hard it is to prepare for a fight, especially with the way I've gone about preparing for this fight. I've put everything in, and I've enjoyed it, and I've got myself in great shape. And if I could be asked to get myself in this shape all the time, I would continue fighting. But it takes such a lot of effort, and approaching 40 next year, I just don't think I have the energy to do it. I could do it, if the opportunity was something ridiculous, but to just continue to fight, I just haven't got the energy to put my body through it anymore.
May I ask what a ridiculous opportunity to fight would constitute for you?
Something like a Nick Diaz rematch pay-per-view, crazy money, something along those lines. Something that's just, a Tyron Woodley rematch. Any of the guys who have gone on to, reach superstar status that have fought or beat Jorge Masvidal, I've beat him, is now an MMA superstar, albeit that he's losing fights, that would be a ridiculous offer that I wouldn't be able to say no to. So any of the huge stars that I've been in there with, that I've had interest in or close fights with, would be something that could motivate me to have one more fight. We've
obviously seen Dan Hardy was announced to fight Diego Sanchez in an exhibition boxing match. Do things like that interest you? The more kind of stranger aspects of combat sports, perhaps?
I'm gonna tell you something. I don't even think Dan knows this, and this is probably an exclusive, but about 2 weeks before Dan announced that fight, I got a message through from someone who will go unnamed, offering me a hell of a lot of money to fight Dan. And I was like, I can't fight Dan. Although we're not close, we don't speak as much as we used to. We pretty much started the sport together, forming rough house between us and training together for the early part of our careers. And it just wouldn't be right me fighting him. But yeah, I actually got offered that fight, and I declined it. Didn't make it public or anything because it was just something I'd never consider. But yeah.
I wanted to ask about this because obviously in combat sports, or in any sport, any athlete knows that retirement is one day going to come. But I guess they don't all happen in the same way. For example, today, Kell Brook announced his retirement a couple of months after the Amir Khan win. But you've announced your retirement and then proceeded to be matched up for a fight. So is it kind of the best way, almost going out on your own terms, in the sense of you can have your celebration on Friday night and kind of end your career how you would like to?
Yeah, I never really looked at it like that. I've like I said, I've been considering retiring for a while because of my body and the energy it takes to train and stuff like that. And I don't want to do myself an injustice in my preparation, which I have done my past few fights. So I've never really thought about it, announcing it before or after. It wasn't a consideration. But it wouldn't make a difference of whether I said I'm going to retire. I retire after the winning, or saying I'm retiring before kicking this guy's ass. It makes no difference to me. The end is the same,
I can remember at some point prior to the original Korshkov match being announced, that you said you wouldn't fight on the London card if you weren't main event, if memory serves. And if
I wasn't co-main event.
Co-main event.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that, please?
I just thought it was a bit of an injustice in that they had, I think they had obviously they had Michael Page as the main event, which is fair enough because it is from North London, same as myself, born in North London. But then they had like the co-main and the one prior to the co-main event were, Douglas, some Americans. And I was like, look, if you're going to, I'm retiring and you're going to bring a show to London, it's a bit disrespectful to then, I think originally I was on the undercard. I was like, yeah, I'm not really feeling that. So unless you put me on the main card or co-main event, then just scratch me from the card altogether. So they gave me a big fight and then they moved me up the card. I've seen how the card is now on the website. I'm not sure if that's the card they're going to go with for the broadcast. But yeah, I'm cool with being where I am at the card. I kind of figured I wanted a reaction. They got a reaction. And they know what I'm like. I'm a guy that will always speak my mind. And I felt that's what they wanted. So I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to give them what they want. I'm just going to fight regardless because I know I'm retiring regardless. So it doesn't really matter.
Obviously, you were originally matched up in a very tantalising matchup with Andrei Korshkov. Obviously, Korshkov's had to pull out and been replaced by Wendell Kiamo, if memory serves. But what were your opinions on your now scheduled opponents, and how disappointing was it for Korshkov to have pulled out?
It was a little bit disappointing, but I didn't want to think about it too much. I was motivated a lot by the fact that it was Koreshkov, and then I was told there was a possibility it could be Lima. So both fights were motivating because they're both former champions, both top tier opponents. But the change of opponent came so late that the momentum that I had already built up and the energy that I had and my mindset was too late to change. Unfortunate for this guy. So it doesn't matter who it is. I'm still preparing as if it is Koreshkov or Lima, because that's what got the ball rolling. And now the ball is rolling, and the energy has been really good, and it's bad for this guy.
I want to talk about a phrase very quickly, Paul, because when I look at your Instagram, I see you often put on the caption of your posts, "Faith of a mustard seed." Now, I obviously know what that phrase means, but can I ask what that phrase means to you personally and why you use it so often?
Because I think it kind of sums up my approach to a lot of things. There have been a lot of, from the start of my career, a lot, I'm not even talking about people involved in the industry, I'm talking about, family members and stuff when I was a kid, and said, being a ninja or being a professional fighter is such a far-fetched thing. And I always believed, and it was just me who believed, and me, myself, has been able to achieve such great things with just that little bit of belief. And it was the same when I was kicked out of the UFC. My management says, "Oh, you're done," blah, 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 blah. And I says, what, people like to see me fight, and I'll still be doing this, and I'll still make something of myself, and I'll make it my career. And it was just me that was saying that. Even my day one coaches were a bit skeptical of whether I could continue in the sport without being in the UFC. But I believed in myself, and again, I'm here 20 years later. So I just, it's something that I've just found in a rap song actually originally, and then I researched it further, and it was obviously it's from the Bible, but it was in a Rick Ross rap where he says faith of a mustard seed destined for a triumph. And I used to listen to that song. I forgot what it's called, something to the grave. I think it was actually a 50 Cent diss track, and I was listening to that a lot of the time, during certain parts of my life, and it just made a lot of sense. Just need a little bit of faith, and you can be destined for great triumph. So I just kept repeating it.
Of course, I've seen as well, you've posted quite a lot, a little bit more than normal on the Instagram. I know you've kind of continually referenced how good of a camp this has been. But I guess how have things been over these last 12 months? I imagine a pretty emotional time towards the end of your career. What has this camp been like in kind of the nitty gritty sense?
I don't know if it's been emotional as such, because like I say, I've been preparing for the retirement, you know, and COVID and, the fights with Massey and the fights with Jason Jackson have given me a lot of time to sort of, put things in place. And I've always been a forward thinker. So, I've always been preparing for a time when I cannot fight anymore. So that's not an issue. I've sort of just kept going as I've always done, regardless of whether this is my last fight or not. I've not really changed much at all in my personal life or with the way I've approached camp or anything. But what I did want to make sure is that I didn't want people to think I was going to cut corners, and I didn't want myself to cut corners. So I've done more. I've not done more, but maybe things that I've skipped out in camps because of the level of opponents I was fighting and the disregard for them. I've put in there, such things as, traveling to other gyms to correct some of the mistakes I've made in previous fights. I wouldn't have bothered. I would have just done the same as I did the previous camps, but I've done more. A lot of things that I couldn't have done because of COVID, warm weather training camps is something I've always done, whether it be go to Thailand or, trip to America or whatever. I've been able to chuck that back in, which I think is good for the mental state. I was out in Spain for 2 weeks at Lewis Barnett Gym with ASW Spain. And I've been up in Manchester, obviously, with Cam there. I've done a little bit more just because I didn't want people to think that I was half-arsing it and just trying to collect a paycheck.
Obviously, I've read previous interviews where you talked about the Sabah Homasi was the original intention for the retirement fight, and then because it wasn't in front of a crowd, specifically a UK crowd, you didn't want to end on that way. Similar with the Jason Jackson fight, but your retirement after all these years in this game is going to come in the UK. So how much more special does that make it for you being able to fight?
I lost sound in the last 5 seconds of that, bro.
How much more special does it feel to be fighting in front of your hometown fans for the last time?
Yeah, it will be special, but I don't think I'll really get a sense of how special it is until the actual night. I know, I'll be doing my runs and I'll be thinking about it, and I get a little bit choked up. So I think, wow, this is one of my last runs of a fight camp ever. And that's quickly pushed aside. But I know on the night it's going to be emotional. And Wembley is fitting because it's been the location for one of my greatest victories, and with Cage Rage beating Mark Ware for the world Cage Rage title. And for me, that was one of the highlights of my career. I was still very young in the sport, albeit still a full-time professional. And it's home, really. It's home. For me in the UK, obviously the majority of my fights have been in America, but when I've been here in the UK and put on the majority of my great performances have been in Wembley.
I'd just like to ask one final question before we go, Paul. Obviously on Saturday morning, the intention is that your career is all said and done. It's written in stone, if you like. But I guess when people look back on Paul Daley's career, what would you like people to remember most about your time in mixed martial arts?
There's not one particular thing I would like them to remember, but I know that, there will be people of my generation that will tell the younger generation, look at this knockout, or that knockout was like one of Semtex's. I will always be referred to at some in some coaches' ear to one young fighter who has a gifted knockout punch like myself. I will always be referenced because there is nobody that has produced the amount of knockouts I have in the style that I've done it. So I know that my name, especially in UK MMA and international MMA, will be referenced for many, many years, and that's good enough for me.
Of course. Well, I think that's a fantastic place for us to end, is the thought of coaches talking to young fighters and referencing how to do it the Paul Daley way. So thank you so much for your time today. It was truly
no problem.
an honour to get some of your time, especially before such a big fight.
Nice one. I appreciate it.
Before we finish, Paul, how can people find you on social media and any sponsors you want to plug? The floor is yours.
Yeah. Social media is at Semtex170. Obviously, my official gym in Nottingham is at Spirit Dojo Legacy. Those are the only 2 social media accounts that I have. Other than that, catch me on Bellator for one last time. BBC iPlayer May 13th, BBC 3 Live.